Hello there, sacred sister. You've entered the space where your voice, your gifts, and your mission are honored. My name is Kim Parkinson, your host today and always, and you are listening to Podcasting for Spiritual Women. I am here to guide and direct you to the best way for you to grow your business and your presence online with your voice, podcasting. Today, we're going to get into some organic discoverability, and we're going to talk about what to name your podcast and why it really matters. So if you have been stuck staring at a blank page and trying to come up with the perfect podcast name, you're not alone. And I think I can help take the pressure off that and make this fun. As we know, words hold energy, and the words you choose for your podcast name are going to be rippling out into the world, and it's going to bring in those people that want to hear your message. Also, it is so super important for this to be what actually starts to bring Google to your podcast as well. The very first thing that Google crawls is your podcast name. And if your podcast name doesn't have keywords in it, you're going to be backpedaling for a little bit with Google. Sure, you can get your word out there through your socials, through your newsletter list, through your email signature, through your thank you pages of courses people are buying. But if you really want that SEO punch, you're going to need to really make a decision on some keywords and make sure that those are in your podcast name. If you have decided to move forward, or maybe you need a rebrand, right? Maybe you're like, oh, crud. I didn't do this. No wonder why I'm not seeing any kind of growth. It could just mean that you take the podcast you have now and you rebrand it. It does not mean you have to start a whole new one. You can just go ahead and rebrand it to something that actually is going to bring in those clients using search engine optimization. It is one of those words that we all look at and we're like, yes, I need SEO. But then we're like, yes, I don't know how to do SEO. Yeah, I know. It's one of those things that you really just need to pay attention to. What are your core topics going to be? Here's the other thing that people always talk about. What are your 3 pillars, right? What are your 3 pillars of content? And sometimes you don't know that. But what are you? Who are you? Who do you serve? And how do you serve them? Can you write those down? I'm sure you can. Write them down and then write out the keywords. What are the words that keep popping up? And if you're like, you know what, Kim, I'm still not getting the keyword thing. Let me tell you, if you were to just open ChatGPT, even the free version, if you don't have to pay for it or anything, open the free version, and especially if you do this on your phone, it's amazing because there's a little feature there where you can hit your microphone and you can actually speak right into it. You can tell ChatGPT what it is that you do, who you serve, how you serve them, and in what capacity you serve them. And then just ask it to pull some keywords and keyword phrases out of those things, because I'm assuming that you are going to be having a podcast based on what you do, who you serve, and how you serve them, and all of that. So if you have already that knowledge, which again, this is kind of like the baseline of what you do, you're then going to know what those keywords are. And those keywords could be, they could be priestess, light healer. They could be podcasting. They could be just anything that is clear, searchable. That is SEO friendly. Basically, SEO friendly is clear, searchable keywords that people are going to be Googling. We need some of those keywords to be in your podcast name. That is where all of those search engines are going to crawl and they're going to find first. The very first thing they're going to crawl is what people are searching for. And if you have those keywords in your podcast name, you're going to come up in the Google, in the Bing, in the Safari, whatever else they have out there. So your podcast name matters. It's the first thing people are going to see the first thing people are going to hear when they come to your podcast, right? Because that's what you're going to say. You're going to hopefully say that in your intro. And it's going to be what really influences any kind of discoverability with SEO and searching on Google or on any of the others. I'm going to say just Google. Let's just go with that because that's the one that I use. That's what most people use. And it's the big powerhouse, right? So if you're listening to this in 10, 20 years and you're like, what is Google? It is a search engine in the year 2025. Google is what we use now. And we need to make sure that our podcast name is findable from Google. So our podcast name is also needs to be aligned with us, right? It just can't be just a bunch of keywords thrown out there because you're going to be like, oh, I hate this podcast name. And it also has to be something that you can say with kind of rapid fluidity. You really need people to be able to riff off right away. And that's me clicking my fingers if you couldn't hear that. Riff off right away, podcasting for spiritual women. And let me tell you, I actually really struggled with the name of it because I was going to put entrepreneurs in there, but it just felt too much like a mouthful. So it was supposed to be podcasting for spiritual women entrepreneurs, but it was just not going to work for me. I think realistically, it is who I'm speaking to, right? Because most of the women that I'm speaking to are spiritual women and they have a business. They want to grow their business. And again, it just didn't work when I was saying it. So I had to kind of pull that back. That needs to be part of your podcast name. You need to be able to say it and feel it and say it quickly. And here's the other thing. You don't need to put your name in it. Unless you are somebody really famous, really out there, people are probably not going to be Googling your name. And if they are Googling your name, hopefully your podcast comes up anyway because your name is automatically kind of in the title because you've listed your name in the hosting platform. So hopefully you have your podcast as, podcasting for spiritual women, and then it's by, and there's a little section there in your host and it says by, and you put your name there. And so your name will automatically pop up. You don't need to have it in the naming convention of your podcast as well. You don't even have to have it in your cover art either. Although I know some people do want to have it in your cover art, you don't need to make it prevalent in your cover art. And we'll talk about cover art too at a different episode, but this one here is just really the naming convention of that. So keyword, have it be super important. Also, what it is that you're doing, what it is that you're talking about, clarity, or maybe you're talking about manifestation, or you're talking about money, or you're talking about wealth, or you're talking about spirituality, or you're talking about Mary Magdalene, whatever you're talking about, you need this to be soul aligned to you, but you also need this to be SEO friendly. First and foremost. And I know people are going to say, I really, the keywords aren't working. I can't do it. Here is a little tip. And even though we are going to talk about cover art later, here's a little tip. The title of your podcast can be in your host as podcasting for spiritual women, but then your cover art could say something along the lines of podcasting for spiritual women entrepreneurs, right? You could actually add more into your podcast cover art. It doesn't have to say exactly what it says for your podcast name. And you could also have podcast names that have extensions and then maybe have a tagline. So my podcast name is Podcasting for Spiritual Women. And the tagline is Sacred Visibility, Monetization, and Aligned Growth for Spiritual-Led Women. Now, if you're using a host, you can actually put that right underneath. And let's kind of break that down. So podcasting for spiritual women, very specific, right? Podcasting for women that are spiritual, all those pieces, 1, 2, 3, 4 is obviously, the word for is obviously not going to be what's searchable here. It's going to be podcasting and then spiritual and then woman, all searchable. And then sacred visibility. Sacred may not be the one that they're searching for, but they may be searching for visibility. They may be searching for monetization, and they may be searching for growth. They may not be searching for the words sacred, aligned. And then the other last little bit is for soul-led women. They may not be looking for soul-led, but they may be looking for women. If you break those down to the keywords, it's podcasting, spiritual, women, visibility, monetization, growth, and women again. Really nailing that in and really getting those keywords to be something that is going to be popping up in the searching. Now, that's not the only place that we're going to be using SEO in future episodes here, but these are the super, super important ones because sometimes people are just too vague. Or maybe they just end up with like a really like mystical type name and they love it. Sometimes it is your brand name, right? I have a client that she's been using her brand name for years, but her brand name has nothing to do with what she teaches. And so she struggled for years on how to grow her podcast, so much so that actually she's just now stopped it. And so when people were Googling what she teaches, they weren't coming up with her podcast. And that's kind of sad, right? Because ultimately we want them to be able to find you in any way possible. So don't overcomplicate it. Long names are hard to remember. So the taglines can be longer, but keep your name pretty short. Podcasting for spiritual women. Short, sweet, to the point, what we're doing, right? Long-term scalability of the name. We need to think about that. We really need to focus in on, will this help us in years in the future? And that's exactly what I'm telling you about the previous client that I had. Her podcast name, she named it in 2020, how she was feeling at that time. And then what she was teaching had nothing to do with that. Like that was like her purpose, like what really spurred her on to move forward with everything. And so she named her business after that. She did a whole bunch of things. But ultimately, the issue being is that she's not really showcasing what she's teaching. So you need to think about these things of what you're teaching, where you are in this before you can actually go ahead and grab all those keywords and then pop those in to make a nice, short, succinct podcast name. So something keyword, something for, something keyword, or something that has a little mystical or a little woo and has keywords all around it. The name you choose will evolve with you, and it is okay to rebrand at a later time. I'm going to tell you that too. You do not need to have it in stone forever. You can change it. You can also change your tagline at any time to work with SEO and see if that helps in future years, future episodes, future whatever. But the most important step is to choose and to get started and then see where that takes you, right? Because that is the very first thing that Google crawls is your podcast name. And we really want people to see that. And we really want people to understand what it is that you do while also making sure that it has some SEO. All right, if you have any questions about how to do this, or if you want some guidance on this, I do offer a podcast growth clarity call. If you want to brainstorm and validate your podcast name, book your free podcast growth call today, and that link will be in the show notes. So until next time, I hope you've enjoyed this short but sweet episode on podcast names and what to name or how to rebrand. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you, beautiful souls. Talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Podcasting for Spiritual Women. If you would like more strategy and tips and some tricks on how to make your podcast better, I recommend that you join my newsletter list. You can find that at kpcreativemedia.com/newsletter. Until next time.